The way to heaven. The Battle of Badr was now over. However, the enemies of religion weren't standing still. Their goal was to put out the light of Islam. But Allah was going to complete the religion He sent. The enemy didn't know about this. They hadn't come to their senses yet. They formed a new army and faced the Muslims, but the Muslims were prepared. It was time to teach the enemies of religion a lesson. The army of Muslims advanced towards Uhud. It was a time of rest, and our Prophet checked his army while they were resting. There were 20 boys at the front line. They all came with the wish to fight the enemies of religion. But they were too young. It just wasn't possible for them to go into battle. So for this reason, our Prophet sent them back. One of these boys was Rafi. A Sahabi called Zuhair knew Rafi very well. He was still very young, but was a very good marksman. He was very good at using a spear. Zuhair consulted our Prophet and said, "Dear Messenger of Allah, Rafi uses the spear very well. He will come with us if you allow him." At that moment our Prophet saw Rafi. He was tiptoeing as he was walking. He wanted to look too tall in order to stay in the army. All he wanted was to fight against the enemy. His wish made our Prophet happy. He let him stay in the army. The sight at Uhud had turned into chaos. The enemy was fighting fiercely, and the Muslims were responding courageously. The enemy army was about to break up. Another joyous victory was very close, but at that moment something unexpected happened. The Muslim soldiers had seen that they were winning the war and left their positions. However, our Prophet had ordered them not to leave their places until they received a sign from him. After seeing that the archers had left their positions, the enemy circled the army of Islam from behind. The Muslims were shocked and didn't know what to do. They were about to separate. Our Prophet showed his incredible courage once more. He didn't leave the battlefield. He wanted to be an example to the other Muslims. There were only a few Muslim fighters left around him, and they were doing the best they could. They tried to protect our Prophet and sacrificed themselves in order to save his life. One of the patient fighters was Hadrat Talha. The enemy soldiers had circled our Prophet and were trying to get closer to him. Talha was fighting bravely and was trying to save our Prophet. It was the turning point of the battle. A couple of Muslim soldiers were trying to protect our Prophet. For a moment, one of the archers of the enemy got very close to our Prophet, and he could see that he was going to aim at him. Talha had realized that the arrow was aimed at the Prophet. He jumped forward all of a sudden and raised his hand. He used his hand as a shield, and the spear went right through. His hand was covered with blood, but he wasn't really thinking about that. He was just happy that the spear hadn't hit our Prophet. He was ready to sacrifice his own life for the well-being and protection of our Prophet. Talha was left very weak from having lost so much blood. For a moment, he fainted and fell down to the ground. Abu Bakr ran to help him and poured water on his face. Talha felt a little better, but wasn't really bothered about his wound. All he could think about was our Prophet. He asked Abu Bakr, "How is the Prophet doing?" Abu Bakr replied, "He is fine. There is nothing to worry about." Talha suddenly felt alive again. It was as if the dripping blood wasn't his. He felt full of life and said, "Thank Allah. As long as our Prophet is alive, These won't have no importance. I am ready to fight against all kinds of evil for his well-being." Islam was spread all over the world with the help of those who fought and died, so that the name of Allah could be spread and made much more important. Those who sacrificed their lives for their religion knew that they would be granted eternal happiness. In fact, it is very difficult to describe how the first Muslims made their sacrifices. To learn about the suffering and hard times that they experienced would bring tears to your eyes. Think of a sea of sand. The burning heat of the sun is upon you and is like a burning flame. This was the kind of desert that the Muslims had to walk barefoot on. Their only wish was to spread the religion of Allah, and for the sake of Allah, died for their religion. They wouldn't care even if their feet got pierced and swollen from the stones, sand and heat from walking long distances. They sometimes continued their journey by tying their feet with pieces of cloth. They were bearing all kinds of difficulties for the will of Allah. They began another journey full of these kinds of difficulties. The army of Islam spent the night somewhere. One of the Sahabis, our Prophet's companions, found a bird's nest there. Suddenly, the mother bird appeared. She wouldn't stop flapping her wings and was trying to save her little bird. The bird was jumping on the hands of Sahabi, who was holding her little bird. This just showed the love and kindness of a mother. If it was an animal, it was ready to sacrifice its life. Our Prophet noticed how the Muslims were watching the bird in amazement, and he looked at them and smiled. You can see that bird trying to save its young one. It is struggling to do something. Don't forget this. The one who has created you has much more mercy, love, and kindness towards you, even more than what the bird has towards its young one. These words affected the Muslims very much. The Sahabi, holding the little bird, released it straight away, and the other Muslims went into deep thought. During the same journey, something strange happened. A camel suddenly came up to them and knelt down before our Prophet. It then put its head forward. It was as if the camel was telling our Prophet something. The Sahabis were very surprised. The behavior of the camel was very strange. What was it trying to say? What was its problem? Everyone was getting curious. Our Prophet then turned to the Muslims and asked, "Do you know what this camel is saying?" The Muslims answered, "No, we don't know." Our Prophet then explained, "This camel is complaining about his owner. It says that he has made him work for years and now he wants to slaughter him." The Muslims were less curious, but it wasn't over. Our Prophet said to Jabir, "Go and fetch me the owner of this camel." Jabir was surprised. "Dear Prophet, I don't know the man." Our Prophet smiled and said, "The camel will take you to him." The camel indeed took Jabir to its owner. Jabir found the man and took him to our Prophet. Our Prophet asked, "Is what this camel tells me true?" The man replied, "Yes, what it says is true." After that, the owner of the camel never put much weight on it and didn't slaughter it either. Our Prophet was a very brave man indeed. At the same time, he was also very kind-hearted. Allah doesn't show mercy to those who don't mercy others. One day, his grandson Hassan was sitting on his lap. He kissed him on the forehead and embraced him. At that moment, someone came up to him and became very surprised when he saw our Prophet in this way. Our Prophet was with a child and he thought, "This can't be." He said, "Dear Prophet, I have 10 children and have never kissed any of them or hugged them like you. I'm very surprised to see you like this." Actually, what were most surprising were the man's words. Our Prophet pitied him and said, "What can I possibly do if Allah has left no kindness or love in your heart? Those who don't show mercy and pity to others will not be shown mercy or pity." Our Prophet also showed mercy to animals and protected them. He would even give water to a thirsty cat with his own hands. He would say, "Dear Allah has forgiven a man for giving water to a dog nearly dying of thirst." Another day, our Prophet came across a sheep. It was apparent that the animal was extremely hungry. Our Prophet was eating dates at the same time. He felt pity for the animal and gave it some dates.